Hello and welcome along to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. It's your host Daniel Hussey here, back with Adrian, Clarke, Mark O'Hare and Miguel Delaney. We'll be covering four marquee games, and ordinarily it's the Premier League, but El Clasico's on this week. It's going to be an absolute super Sunday of football, so we're going to get straight into it. Before we do, if you are watching on YouTube, do give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel down below, and if you are listening on your preferred podcast app, we'd love a 5-star preview if you're enjoying the content. So there, lads, there's no messing today. Let's get straight into El Clasico. It's going to be an absolute cracking game. I think there'll be a lot of people split screening this one. This one kicks off at 3:15 on Sunday. So let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently on matchbook.com. Real Madrid are 2.28 favourites. Barcelona 3.15 with the draw available at 3.7. Both teams to scores as low as 1.56. No is 2.58. The handicap at Real Madrid are getting Barcelona are getting a quarter of a goal head start at 1.93. And the total is 3.0, slightly shaded towards the unders at 1.92. So, Miguel, I want you to set the scene for El Clasico here. I know you were out and about. I don't know if you got the highlights or not from the match last night, but Barcelona, Inter Milan. But it was an absolute crazy game. And I guess Barcelona could be looking at a Europa League campaign in the new year, meaning La Liga is their only choice of silverware this year.
Well, yeah, and also it makes this kind of game even more important than usual. It is, of course, the biggest fixture, but it puts further context on their summer, given that Barcelona's entire financial plan had basically been predicated on this so-called virtuous cycle, where they bring in stars. The stars have them bring in stars on debt or on huge fees that they can't necessarily afford right now. The stars put them into the biggest games, go the distance to the Champions League, the club gets wealthier, and on and on. Whereas, as you say, it hasn't started well. They drew 3-0 with Inter, which puts them on the brink of elimination of the Champions League. If Inter beat Pilsen, Barca need two things to go their way. They need to beat Bayern Munich and hope Inter beat Victoria Pilsen. So the odds aren't great in that regard, which means they're likely dropping into the Europa League. And suddenly this new project looks a lot looks a lot less. I mean, people were talking about them as potential Champions League winners. They don't look that at the moment. And while Xavi can blame, I see him talking after, he's talking about kind of grey or serious and inexcusable defensive errors, talking about bad luck, penalty against Inter, Lewandowski dropping that performance against Bayern. But even then, I think we flagged it up in this podcast. There was issues in the general play for a Xavi team to be going to resort to crosses so much. And it means going into this, yeah, as you say, now their big opportunity as what they would consider major silverware is trying to reclaim the league of Real Madrid. It is a Real Madrid that, and it's interesting, we've had the Mbappe story this week because he was supposed to revitalize Real Madrid along with winning last season's Champions League. It's Madrid who've had issues themselves. So it actually makes this, I think, a very hard game to call, in that both sides have been comfortable in the league, but I think it's fair to say just the dynamic of the Spanish league at the moment means they're both a fair bit ahead of the rest, with some of that exposed then when they go into Europe, although obviously Madrid have had a much more forgiving group. And it's why the only thing I'd be comfortable basically betting on for this game is that there's going to be a fair few goals, as there generally is in the Clasico, because of the nature of it, because it's open. But in terms of who's going to win, who looks better going into it, it's actually, I think it's really, really hard to say. Maybe harder than any Clasico in a long time.
Yeah, so you're like an over 3.5. I think it's around just over 6-4 at the moment, 2.54. So decent enough price. And we know Miguel's been getting them in lately with the high goal lines. So this is quite low for Miguel, to be fair. Mark, you're in broad agreement in terms of goals in this fixture, but set it up. Miguel set up nicely there. But in terms of Barcelona project at the moment, I mean, you've been watching them from afar. They haven't been impressive. They weren't impressive at the weekend, but this was a massive blow last night, wasn't it?
Huge blow. And I think in hindsight, kind of coming into this game or into the game against Inter Milan, it's very revisionist to kind of say you were expecting that kind of game to play out. But really, when you look at the team news and you figure out for Derek Garcia and Piqué, are there any natural centre-backs available to them? Marcos Alonso played there at the weekend against Celta Vigo. Kind of goes to show where they're at. Jules Koundé very likely to be missing again. Christensen, Bellerin, Araujo all missing as well. So they've not got a huge amount of cover to be able to bring in. And obviously Sergio Roberto, as we know, is a converted midfielder who's playing right back as well. So there are issues in the way in which they did defend against Inter, left a lot to be desired, didn't it? And even if you look at their La Liga form, 7 clean sheets in 8, doesn't paint the full picture. Celta Vigo had 3 or 4 clear-cut opportunities last week, and Ter Stegen was man of the match for Barcelona. They've had 20 shots conceded, 20 shots on target conceded in La Liga this season. They've conceded once. That's unsustainable, really. I know Ter Stegen's been immense for a number of seasons, but that can't keep happening, really. And I think the way in which they were cut apart on the counter-attacking transitions would be a big concern against the Real Madrid team, who I know they have the rest advantage here, but they did have to travel to Poland, so maybe that wipes it out. But obviously Barcelona had the more intense fixture 24 hours later, but Ancelotti was able to rest and rotate in Warsaw. Modric, Vinicius, Alaba all came off the bench. I think it is advantage Real Madrid. I'd be much more comfortable backing Madrid at the prices because basically the market's saying that these two teams are equal right now, and I'm not sure that is the case considering the team news with Barcelona. However, this is a weird fixture, curious in terms of home advantage almost just goes out the window. 4 home wins in the last 18 matches that weren't played on neutral venues in the Clasico. Last year's 2 games were actually won by the away team. That's probably require a little bit of context. Barcelona were a shambles at the start of the season and then recovered after the sort of January signings, and Real Madrid had already wrapped up the league and rested Benzema when they played the reverse game. But even still, over the long term, it's not been a game in which the home teams tend to thrive. So quite happy to sort of leave the result and sort of follow Miguel in on a high-scoring game here. Real Madrid have conceded in 9 of 12 games across La Liga and Champions League. If you look at the expected points records, they're actually ranked 3rd behind Barcelona and Athletic Club, which is quite surprising. Their XG processes is also the 3rd best, and I just don't even if they're able to field their best choice or first choice defence in this match, I still would back Robert Lewandowski and then Barcelona to score against any defence in the planet. We saw how many opportunities they carved out at Bayern Munich when they were playing a team who were quite happy to take the initiative and go forward and be proactive, which is what Real Madrid will do, considering it's a home Clasico. So, I'm happy to back over 2 3/4 goals at 175. I thought it was a very generous offering, actually, to be getting a payout if there's at least 3 goals in this match. The last 5 have featured at least 3 goals. And as I say, both defences, there's question marks over, but you just look at the game changers, the match-winning quality in both camps. Benzema, Lewandowski, Vinicius, Rodrigo, Rafinha, Dembele, Ferran Torres. You could carry on, really. Star-studded forward lines and defences, which I'd be running a mile from right now. So over 2 3/4.
Sometimes it's simple enough. So we've got Miguel at over 3.5 at 2.56, Mark's in at 1.75 at over 2 3/4. This reminds me, Adrian, of the Arsenal-Liverpool game last week, which ultimately did work because you're going to go somewhere in the middle of the goal line here. What are supporting what the lads are saying?
Yeah, I hadn't seen what the guys had picked, but yeah, so it's quite fitting. I should just slot in the middle there. It kind of fits with the pattern, doesn't it?
It does.
It's Mark very cautious, Miguel just gung ho, and there's me, boring old me in the middle.
Well, make the case.
So predictable. No, there's not a lot to add really. There's a lot of firepower. Like the respective attacks are considerably better than the respective defences. I mean, Barcelona are a little bit all over the place at the moment, aren't they? Real Madrid aren't exactly watertight. No clean sheets at home yet in La Liga. What I will say is that Real Madrid's XG against is actually better than Barcelona's. They've conceded 7 in La Liga and Barcelona have conceded 1. So sometimes, the league table can lie a little bit, and I think it does here. But yeah, there's not much new in terms of what I can offer other than to suggest that I don't know who's going to win the game. I haven't got a clue. I think this is a really, really hard game to pick, but I would fancy that the respective forward lines will turn it on and that we'll get ourselves a really, really exciting game. So yeah, that's where I'm heading.
Yeah, it was good luck for me the last time to split it in the middle. So Adrian, I'm going to go with you at over 3.0 goals at 1.99. So that's half your stakes at over 2.5 and half your stakes at over 3.5. And on matchbook.com, you can find that in the Asian lines and the total goals. So well worth checking out there. So we're going to lock that in as an official bet on the podcast. And what we do for those new to the podcast, we keep the best bets as an ROI, and we will share some of those results there. But also we put up some official bets, and all those bets will be available on Matchbook Insights. So moving on to the big game in the Premier League here. So Liverpool versus Manchester City. And look, you'd probably be surprised at some of these prices at the start of the season, given people were tipping up Liverpool for the Premier League. But they're currently 4.2 at home to Manchester City as we record on Thursday morning. City are 1.88, the draw available at 4.2. Both teams to score, again, another low price at 1.51. Yes, the handicap sees Liverpool getting just so you come up on the screen, a 3/4 goal start at 1.88, and the goal line is 3.25 goals, slightly shaded towards the over at 1.95. So, Mark, we'll go to you on this one versus Liverpool and Man City. Firstly, where are you at with these prices? I guess like sometimes markets can overreact, sometimes they underreact. Have they got it about right here on the match odds firstly going into this game?
I think so. I've got an expected model I run through prices with, which kind of gives me a nice kind of base price to work from. And I have Man City coming in at 1.8, and they've actually drifted overnight since Liverpool's match against Rangers, really, which might surprise a few. I don't think thrashing Rangers and sort of running riot in the second half is going to sort of significantly change my opinion on their chances against Manchester City this weekend. But it's a shame this match is kind of taking place when it is, really, because it's normally kind of a mammoth title deciding showdown, even if it is taking place at this kind of start of the season, or feels like near the start of the season. But there's 13 points between the two, so even if Liverpool do win this, it's still a tall order to sort of reel City back in, or even Arsenal. But we've seen them do similar in past campaigns, including last year. So who knows, really? But yeah, Liverpool I just don't know where they're at right now. It's hard to sort of pinpoint what's going wrong, or you can kind of come up with suggestions. But for me, the biggest alarming fact is that they do just keep conceding the opening goal. Did it last weekend, did it again midweek at Rangers. There's just no sort of defence for it, really. They've conceded 3 goals or more in consecutive Premier League games. They've conceded multiple goals in half of their 8 Premier League games. I was a little bit surprised with the team that Klopp selected against Arsenal last weekend. Basically the same as what he did against Rangers, almost trying to go all-out attack with 4 forwards, and I thought it exposed the middle of the team. When Arsenal beat the press, so it was very difficult for Liverpool. Really, they lacked the mobility in that midfield area to sort of provide protection for the likes of Trent, who was again sort of exposed by Martinelli and the rest of the back four too, who really shouldn't be kind of adverse from criticism either, particularly Van Dijk, who's been appalling. I know Salah come off the bench and made a massive impact midweek, but he had next to no impact either, or influence against Arsenal. So concerning stuff, and defensively too, you're missing Trent, you're missing Matip here. So you're going to have Joe Gomez at right back, Andy Robertson probably back in the squad and available, but Diaz, who I think has probably been the most consistent performer, is absent as well. So Liverpool are quite a way off their best 11, and quite a way off knowing what exactly their plan and approach is right now. Klopp doesn't seem to be having the answers to the questions that are being thrown up. But I guess the obvious caveat to opposing Liverpool here is Anfield, underdogs, everyone's against them, big price. They tend to come out firing and fighting. So, but City have the rest advantage. City had the easier midweek task, able to rest and rotate. No more new injuries. All the attention is on Haaland, but Foden's been just as mesmeric. And then you've got the likes of Bernardo and Grealish and Mahrez, even Gundogan. So many ways to hurt a team, especially a Liverpool team who are looking so vulnerable defensively right now. So I think it's very difficult for me not to look towards City here. They've scored first in 8 of 9 Premier League games. Liverpool have conceded first in 10 of the last 12. If City score first, we know the story. We've seen it before. They squeeze the life out of you. They control matches, and they're able to sort of play to exactly how they want to under Pep Guardiola. So I'm going to be pro City here. I think the price, as I say, is fine, but you can add over 1.5 goals into the mix and rule out the 1-0 away win, which gives us, it's actually been on a little bit of a drift overnight. So it's 2.08, I believe, now. Does really appeal. As you say, the goal line is favouring the overs at 3 and 3.25. So if the market's expecting almost 4 goals, I think it's not a huge ask to just chuck in over 1.5 goals if you are pro City. Overall, these two teams have played 17 Premier League games this season. 13 of those have actually featured 3 or more goals. We're just requiring 2 in a City win.
Yeah, some good case there, and the lads have had some great success combining the match result and total goals. You can find that in other markets on matchbook.com. Adrian, I want to throw a stat at you because I saw the stat last night going, I bet you Adrian might have had this on his stat pack here, but 51.4% of all Liverpool's goals this season have come against Bournemouth and Rangers.
I didn't actually, which is is amazing, isn't it? That is a good stat. I still don't have that many qualms about Liverpool's attack. I know that they're depleted, but Even though Salah was terrible at Emirates Stadium, but he will be lifted by that hat-trick. Jota got a hat-trick of assists. I thought Darwin Núñez actually was really dangerous in the game against Arsenal, as was Firmino, who's in good form this season. So they've actually got enough going forward, I think, to maybe score in this game and to give City problems. I'm fascinated to see what Klopp does. I mean, to go 4-4-2 against Rangers is fine. To try it against Arsenal was a big old risk, and it definitely backfired. Is he really going to go 4-4-2 against Manchester City in this game? If he does, then we could get fireworks. We could get an awful lot of goals because they're not good enough defensively at the moment without the ball, Liverpool, to cope with City's three-man midfield. And this is a special City team. I think it's easy to forget. You get a little bit blasé about them winning most weeks and whatnot. And and the fact that they're not top of the league at the moment as well maybe downplays their excellence. But they've lost one of their last 37 Premier League games. So put that over one season, and they're almost invincible. Away from home, they're on the fourth longest unbeaten run in Premier League history, 22 games. So it's a long, long time since they were beaten on the road. I think both teams' score is obviously short for good reason. 9 of their last 10 meetings, Liverpool and Manchester City have produced both teams to score. So that is fairly likely. But the thing is, City have scored multiple goals against a Liverpool team that was miles better than this current Liverpool team. So I don't see any reason why that's going to change. It's just, what can Liverpool produce in return? So yeah, I'm with Mark. If Liverpool start slowly again, it could get a little bit messy. But I do think that they're capable of scoring. As I said, Núñez and Firmino are in good form. Salah and Jota contributed in midweek. And the other stat to throw at you is Liverpool are, even though they've been brilliant, we know that they've been brilliant over the last few seasons, they're actually winless against City in the last 5 meetings. So again, a very good Liverpool team still hasn't been able to beat City for quite a long time. Do we really think they're gonna beat them this time based on the form book? I'm not so sure. So yeah, I'm the same as Mark. Got to back City here, but I'll pair it with both teams to score, and you get quite juicy odds actually. 3.15 was last time I looked.
Yeah, 3.1. We have it here, so that's a pretty decent price. It'll be hard, Miguel, to talk me off that cliff. But it's interesting that what Adrian says there. You just assume Liverpool have always beaten City at Anfield, or at least. So I found that stat, having won in the last 5, amazing. But yeah, going into this game, we're set the scene going into Anfield. Like I mentioned, the match odds. Is there any case to be made for Liverpool at over 3-1?
Well, I mean, that perception, I suppose, that they had beaten them, it comes from that period in 2017 where actually City kept losing to Liverpool, and it felt like Klopp had the number over them. Obviously, actually, both teams have changed stylistically a lot since then. City maybe only really drastically, or not drastically, but only really in any sort of significant way in the last year, obviously, with the shift towards Erling Haaland. And I think it's why goals are obvious. Liverpool can't properly defend at the moment. City, partly because of how they use Haaland, are a bit more stretched as a team, which means they're scoring a lot more goals, but they're also conceding more, which is why I think goals are a good bet. As regards the actual result, and I suppose why two of us have gone for Manchester City to win, I think with these sort of games, I mean, there is a little bit of a kind of trend in football where when it comes to these, two of the top sides meeting in a match where one has been in awful form and one has been in imperious form, suddenly it can often build up into something where on the day itself it just goes in the reverse. And I'm thinking of countless examples. The one that comes to mind most prominently actually is in 2005 when Manchester United in crisis, Roy Keane having had his famous tape but to leave the club, and Chelsea having been unbeaten, I think, at the start of that season, and United beat them 1-0. That can happen so often. But those sort of, another, I suppose, United against the Invincibles, but all those sorts of performances tend to come when the side who's on worse form basically just adapts to the opposition, digs in, and kind of plays almost, you'd almost call it kind of a classic Jose Mourinho approach. And this is one of the things with Liverpool. I mean, we don't really know what Klopp's system is at the moment in any case. And Adrian says a good point there about the 4-2-4. I mean, on reflection now, the fact he played that midfield against Arsenal is actually staggering. No holding midfielder. But secondly, whatever approach Klopp plays, you just know it's not going to be something like this that can potentially frustrate City, which means there's going to be goals here. And if that plays out, basically Liverpool, if he plays any sort of game where they take City on their own terms, which has generally been Klopp's approach since he's kind of evolved from gegenpressing early on in his Liverpool career, then you just fancy Liverpool to outscore Liverpool. Fancy City to outscore Liverpool when it comes right down to it, and that's hence I've gone for a City win and a fair few goals.
Yeah, City over 2.5, 2.44. So it's rare that Adrian has the biggest price, but I think given it's a big game, people will be watching looking for a fun bet. I think City and both teams to score is a fun one to cheer on there. So that's a decent price. 3.1 currently on Matchbook. So that's City to win and both teams to score. So we'll lock that in as an official bet on Matchbook. So we'll move on to Villa versus Chelsea. So this is the undercard game. I guess every big game has an undercard. It's probably, in my opinion, the third out of the 4 2:00 games. But here we are. It's on Sky. I've had the misfortune of tuning into Villa games for the last few weeks on Sky. It hasn't been great. I'll move on to prices here. Villa 4.9, Chelsea 1.83. The draw is available at 3.9. Villa are getting a 3/4 of a goal head start at 1.87, and both teams' score is yes 1.92, no 1.99, and the goal line is currently 2.5. And that's slightly shaded towards the under. As you can see, they're just nibbled in a bit at 1.9. So we'll go to you for this one, Mark. Aston Villa versus Chelsea. Steven Gerrard, where are you with him at the moment? Because I touched on some of his games, so I think a lot of people would probably have tuned in for them. They've had a lot of primetime games recently, and they've been brutal. I thought they were absolutely shocking it on Monday Night Football.
You're not alone, Dan. I've seen someone tweeted he's seen 3 appalling Premier League matches on TV so far this season, and all of them involved Aston Villa. It's hard to disagree, is it? If you're trying to be positive about it, you can say Villa are unbeaten in 4. But 3 of those are drawn. The reality is they've won once in 7 and once twice in 13, going further back as well. This season, only Wolves have scored fewer goals, and their average of 10.9 shots per game is the second lowest tally since records began in the Premier League. The occasion it was worse, they got relegated and finished bottom. So it's been really, really grim. It's been a grind. Only 3 sides are generating a lower expected goals figure on average, and only once this season have Villa accumulated an XG tally of 1.5 or more. I don't think it's the fact that they failed to beat 10-man Leeds or a Forest team that have been, lost their previous 5, and a lot of fans were pretty disgruntled with things. It's just the manner of the performances, really. It's the selection, the tactics. I'm seeing a lot of key players performing way below expectations. That's frustrating most Villa fans. And results-wise as well, long-term, it's not been great. 36 games in charge in the Premier League for Gerrard now, pretty much a full season. They've won 12 of those, and his points per game tally is 1.22 per game. So, extrapolate that over a 38-game season, Villa finished with 46 points. Last year, they finished with 45 points. So, have they progressed since Dean Smith's sacking? Are they anywhere close to where we probably expected they should be? No. Clearly, key injuries have hampered that progress, but still, the product that we're being served up by Aston Villa right now isn't good. And, this is a big pressure game for Aston Villa. So I don't hold out a huge amount of hope for them, though. This weekend, their head-to-head record against Chelsea is very poor. Last season, they lost all 10 matches against the top 5. They lost 6 of 7 against the top 7 at home, and Chelsea beat them comfortably home and away as well. The Blues, 3 wins on the spin now in the Premier League, back-to-back wins over Milan in the Champions League as well. They didn't have to be pushed that hard, actually, midweek either because of the red card. So I expect them to be fairly fresh. So, I'm happy to be pro-Chelsea here just because Villa are appalling. I think the price on Chelsea, 1.83, to sort of boost that up to 2.12 and include under 4.5 goals is what kind of appealed to me here. Only 2 of their combined 17 Premier League matches this season have featured over 3.5 goals, let alone over 4.5. This season, since the start of last season, or at least under Gerrard, Villa have gone over 4.5 goals just twice, and Chelsea have seen over 4.5 goals just twice since the start of last season away from home. So everything to me points to it being possibly a bit more of a grind with Villa involved, but I just think Chelsea's class will tell in the end. They seem to be in a good space right now, moving in the right direction under Potter, just can't have anything to do with Villa right now.
Yeah, Adrian, you're on the similar lines here. So Chelsea under 4.5 goals, 2.12.
Yeah, I'll go with it, exactly the same one. Most of the same reasons, really. They just look a little bit lost, don't they, Villa, at the moment under Steven Gerrard tactically, not quite sure what they're trying to achieve. they can scrap, and they've got a bit of game management about them. And we saw that with that 1-1 draw against Manchester City, but it feels like that's a little bit of an outlier in terms of performance levels. And even then, they were under an awful lot of pressure in the game. They're not scoring enough goals, just 7 over the course of this season. You can't see them really hurting Chelsea in the game. And just compare the managers, don't you? I mean, Gerrard and Potter as players, you've got different levels there, but I would flip it around really based on what I've seen over the last year or so, and say that Potter and Gerrard as managers are also on different levels, with Potter being way ahead of Steven Gerrard tactically. And a lot was said when Mick Beale left for QPR about how Gerrard would miss him and his influence. Well, they certainly look to have regressed since his assistant went to Loftus Road. So that is a problem. I think he's on a sticky wicket, Steven Gerrard, and I'm not totally convinced he's going to stay in this job long term. With Chelsea, I've been pretty impressed with Potter. He's going to rotate. He's a little bit of a Pep roulette kind of guy, isn't he? That you never know who's going to play. I think Reece James might be out, which is a bit of a shame for them, because I think that his absence will affect the balance. But he's making some good calls with the team selection, and big decisions as well. Bringing Kepa in for Mendy is shouldn't be overlooked. That's a strong decision that Potter's made early doors there, that he likes him better than Mendy, and he's responded, hasn't he? So yeah, no, I think this has all the looks of a little bit like Chelsea over in Milan, a kind of solid, professional, not that exciting away win at Villa Park. That's how I see this one panning out. Chelsea and under 4.5.
Can I just ask, Adrian, because I don't know the answer to this question either, and you brought it up, so forgive me for sort of putting it on you, but the Mick Beale thing to QPR, clearly, kind of, if you take a step back, it looks like it's had a big impact. Obviously, Rangers are going pretty well in the Championship. Villa have regressed. But Villa did take Neil Critchley from Blackpool, who worked minor miracles at Bloomfield Road. So, I just find it hard to kind of...
Yeah, but it's about dynamics, isn't it? And in the dressing room, I don't know the personality of Beale and Critchley. I don't know what sort of training sessions they put on. That they all know football. Steven Gerrard knows football. He's he's a smart guy. He's not an idiot. He had great success at Glasgow Rangers as well. He knows the game. He's not an awful manager. He's just a little bit lost at the moment. I don't know. I think from what I hear, it's more the energy of the sessions and the sort of work that they do in the week that really got the players engaged before. And I don't know whether that's happening as much now. It's not that Critchley knows less than Beale or whatnot, but sometimes it could just often be a personality thing and how the two guys work together. I've worked in teams where a manager and assistant kind of don't agree on that many things, but they say different things, different ideas on the game. I don't know what the dynamic is between Gerrard and Critchley, but with Beale, it seemed to, the track record would suggest that it was good chemistry, and maybe the chemistry is not the same now.
Yeah, Miguel, I guess for every Ryan Clough, there's a Peter Taylor.
Yeah, basically. And I mean, it has informed a lot of Villa's season that way. I've written about it myself, and I totally agree with the guys in terms of how just there's a different. I mean, some of this may come down, I suppose, to managerial background in that regard, how they've trained or how they've been trained as coaches, what they've been used to, and from that perspective as well, I've been at a fair few Chelsea games recently, and I mean, I wrote this on Wednesday after the Milan game, where, I mean, they're pretty much the definition of quietly going about a good job. And I think, I mean, maybe it was, I'd say the response to Potter coming in was muted. And there was probably a little bit of a perception that precisely because he's not someone like Steven Gerrard or someone like Thomas Tuchel, who comes in with a huge reputation, but has been kind of steadily doing a job. There was almost that perception that, well, this could go wrong for Chelsea because the players, a dressing room like that, it's very different to Brighton. How will they respond? Whereas so far, I think the pure quality of his coaching has just had a positive effect on Chelsea. And I think that works in two ways. First of all, there is the tactical variety to his team, in which he plays a different system with a different lineup every game. Secondly, it's been put to me by people around Chelsea. That's actually been a subtly clever way of keeping the entire dressing room engaged. Everyone knows they're in chance for football. Everyone's kind of primed for it, but not guaranteed a place. And it's created, it's an edge. It's also helped fed into some nice football. And I think, it's two teams going into this game from completely different perspectives. And I can see it as a very comfortable Chelsea, and maybe not comfortable in terms of the exact scale of goals, but comfortable in terms of how easy they have it.
Yeah, so Miguel's going for Chelsea over 1.5 goals, 2.3. For official bet here, we're going to go for Chelsea and under 4.5 with the guys at 2.12. I do think the jump from 1.83 is pretty decent, as Mark touched on. So we're going to lock that in and move on to our final game, which is the only Saturday game we're covering. It's the 12:30 game live on BT Sport. Leicester City at home to Crystal Palace. And let's take a look at the betting. We've Leicester City available at the match odds at 2.4. Crystal Palace at about 9-4, 3.25. And the draw available at 3.55. Both teams to score is yes, 1.76. No is 2.28. Crystal Palace are getting a quarter of a goal head start at 1.92. And the goal line that we currently have is 2.5. And that's a good bit shaded towards the over at a 1.91. So we'll go to you, Adrian, on this one. Leicester City versus Crystal Palace. You props to you on Crystal Palace last week. You bigged them up and said that the time was coming against Leeds. And despite a rocky start, they did manage to dig out a win. And it was a massive win for Patrick Vieira's side.
It really was. It was deserved as well. I think Leeds had a good start to the game, didn't they? But Palace came on really, really strong, and definitely were worthy winners. And I think that they can continue it. I mean, last time out of the King Power, Leicester were great, weren't they, against Forest? They did score some great goals in the game. I think there was, it wasn't as if they carved out a million easy chances. They brought their shooting boots in that game. At Bournemouth, obviously, after taking a step forward, they went 2 back by losing there, and that's put the pressure back on Brendan Rodgers big time, hasn't it? And I don't think this is an easy game for them. When I look at it, yes, they're always worth a goal, aren't they? Leicester City, a goal or two, but can you really trust this Leicester defence yet? I don't think you can. I think without the ball, they're not a patch on what they have been in recent years. I think Wilfred Ndidi continues to be absent, and that makes a bit of a difference. But my angle really here is on Palace and maybe how I think they might be a little bit better than what we believe they are. They're actually unbeaten right now against anyone outside the top 4. So, their only defeats came against the teams at the very top of the Premier League table. Look elsewhere, they've been picking up draws and the odd victory. And I think I look at Leicester and I think they will feel they can go there. They'll be attack-minded, that. Eze is coming into some really, really good form. Zaha loves this fixture. He scored 7 against Leicester. He's been involved in 9 different Premier League goals against them down the years, which is basically his favourite opponent. So if people believe in that, then maybe Wilfried Zaha to score any time might be a shout. But I look at what Palace did at Liverpool. They got a draw. They got a draw as well at Newcastle. They went 2-0 up at Manchester City, albeit losing that game. I think they can go to the King Power and get a result. So what am I thinking here is just Crystal Palace plus a quarter of a goal. So that we're in a nice bit of profit, even if they pick up a draw.
Yeah, Miguel, where are you at with this game in terms of a bet, the early kickoff?
I find it's quite difficult to read.
Yeah.
Especially, and there is probably a danger of actually one of those where there's a danger of basically going on the last game we saw, which is supposed a Leicester win and a Palace win after both had very different rockier periods. Obviously, Palace much more, I suppose, looking much more secure. But I think because of that, and because I think Palace are generally in better shape, bit more momentum about them, and I've had actually quite a tough run of fixtures. I think, my instinct is for Palace to win this with a clean sheet. But equally, it's possible, like given Leicester's recent win, where Rodgers maybe tries to play kind of a cannier game. I think this could actually be lower scoring than expected. So I'm going to go for both teams not to score, and that's one on pure gut. And I think just because of the nature of this game and the way the two teams are going into it, it could be a lot cagier than anticipated.
Yeah, we've said the best of last here, Mark. I'm always told early on in betting, or at least my own experience, was be aware of the early kickoff for a variety of reasons. But mainly, I think they tend to be, at least from memory here, with no stats to back it up, boring, dull games. So tell us why the overs are a cracking bet here in the early kickoff.
Yeah, I don't believe those myths. There's nothing to prove that way.
Crazy games at 12:30 as well. I think people ignore that. There's been some bonkers matches in the early kickoffs.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting listening to the lads, because I found this possibly the most straightforward game of all to kind of find. I actually had 3 selections now to try and narrow it down to one. So yeah, I was pro Palace plus a quarter. But more overwhelmingly, it's just to get with goals in this game, which kind of flies in the face of Miguel a little bit. So apologies there, but I think both teams to score as a massive runner, and I think over 2.5 goals. There's no way I can turn it down at 1.91 in a Leicester game. It's just almost routine. It's just a blind bet for me, almost week to week. If Leicester games are 1.91 over 2.5 goals, just bet it every week. This season they played 9 games, 8 have gone over, 5 have gone over 3.5. 7 have seen both teams scoring. The matches have averaged 4.33 goals. They've scored in 8 of 9. They've conceded in 8 of 9. They've scored twice or more in 5 of 9, but they've conceded twice or more in 7 of 9. And they've conceded 24 goals through the first 9 games, which is their joint highest tally at this stage of the season in their history. So defensively, atrocious. We know that. There was a complete debacle at Bournemouth as well. So yeah, huge game for them. I thought the Forest win was going to be the catalyst for a bit of a comeback, really, and they deserved the win, even if Adrian's bang on in terms of 3 of their goals are either from superlative strikes or kind of outrageous kind of build-up play. Wasn't or isn't sustainable, but we've seen this from Leicester all through the season so far. They have flashes of quality. They have individual players who can change games, who can provide the cutting edge required to score not just once but a couple of goals as well. And again, they proved at Bournemouth they can be just disastrous defensively. And this isn't just this season either. If you go back to the start of last season, overs in Leicester games have landed in 68%. In the Premier League, 3.41 goals per game, 38% going over 3.5 goals, 70% seeing both teams scoring. Just more than enough kind of ammunition for me to pull the trigger here, because the price of 1.91 over 2.5 goals suggests we've just got a 52% chance of seeing 3 goals or more. Now, all those stats I've just read to you are all Leicester-based, and they're all overwhelmingly strong in favour of much higher probability than just 52%. But I think Palace absolutely can join in the party here, because you might expect Palace to be quite tight, but half of their games have gone overs already. They've scored in 7 of 8. Both teams have scored in 6 of 8, and that's including 3 or 4 meetings with the Big Six. It could have easily been 4 or 4 against the Big Six as well if you go back to the opening day against Arsenal. And actually, away from home, under Patrick Vieira, exclude the Big Six, Palace have scored in 16 of 20 away days. And as the guys have already alluded to, Eze, Zaha, Elise, just players who can create and should provide plenty of promising moments in a game which I think will be quite loose, because Leicester have to be proactive, have to be offensive here. I just don't see any other way they can approach this match, considering the plight that they're in, and particularly Brendan Rodgers. I'm sure you've probably seen the story about Leicester having to sort of cancel birthday announcements at the game because of the names that fans are coming up with. He is up against it. He's on the brink right now, and his team can't come into this game with a defensive mindset. A, they're not good enough for it, and B, anything but a win, he's going to be under even more pressure and probably loses his job in the next couple of weeks if things don't turn. So, all about goals for me.
Yeah, Zach Rodgers was my personal favourite out of that one. I think that was the alarm bell started ringing there. And I don't know how that leaked and got out, though. It's amazing.
It's unbelievable. I missed that story. I've got to look that up. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll send on the link. We won't lock an official bet here because it's one of the guys' best bets, and that's probably giving the game away enough as it is. So we'll do a quick recap.
Strong case from Marco here, I've got to say. Can I change my mind?
We'll never know. You never know. We'll just have a quick look at the bet recap that we have so far. So over 3.0 goals is the split decision at 1.99 in the El Clasico. City and both teams to score have gone with a big price here, 3.1 at Anfield, and Chelsea and under 4.5 goals at 2.12. Maybe worth putting in a multiple, which you can do on Matchbook.com. The only exchange, incidentally, you can do multiples. So well worth checking out there. So insights.matchbook.com if you want a full recap of those bets or the bets we're about to cover here, because I know there's a lot at you over the weekend. All right, Adrian, Watford versus Norwich, and it gives us a good chance to talk a little bit about Watford and Rod Edwards and ultimately the failed project there. Was it the right call to let him go that early? I know Village hasn't got off to the best start here, and they're home to high-flying Norwich.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a ridiculous call to get rid of him that early, given that he's someone that needs time to build a sort of culture change and philosophy. A very smart head coach. I think that they've dispensed with way too soon. I do like Slaven Bilic though, so good luck to him. I mean, he's lost 2 of 3. I mean, if that turns into losing 4 or 5, then he'll probably be gone, won't he? By the end of the month, he'll be gone by Halloween, by Watford standards. So he's got to be careful. Yeah, these are 2 teams that are flawed. Two teams that can definitely come back up, but they're not in the best of shapes. Attack is certainly a strength for both, and I would say that at the back there are issues. Both teams to score is my pick because it's been successful 62% of the time for both of them this season, which is very high in the sort of championship BTTS rankings. Norwich have only failed to score in 1 of 13 games. Josh Sargent, Teemu Pukki, Todd Cantwell, these guys, they're always worth a goal or 2. Watford, despite having issues, have only failed to score in 2 of 13 games. So again, top end of the pitch, that's where they've got a lot of firepower. They both come into this off the back of disappointing defeats, so there'll be a little bit of fire, I think, from Bilic, is Watford for sure, and I think Dean Smith will replicate with his team. So yeah, clean sheets have been few and far between. I think they've had 4 clean sheets apiece so far out of those 13 games. So for me, mash it all together. I think you got a game with 2 good attacks and not so good defenses, and I think we'll see both teams score. It wouldn't surprise me if this is a score draw.
And then moving on to your second pick here in League One, and sometimes a bet, Adrian, looks too good to be true here. I think Plymouth have won 4 in a row. MK Dons 3 defeats, 1 sitting top of the league. MK Dons in the relegation zone currently, and Plymouth to win away to MK Dons is 2.3 currently.
Yeah, the price literally winked at me as I was going through the League Ones. It was like, whoa, it's like it's sort of flashing out. I'm like, is that right? I'll tell you why I would be so surprised. I mean, MK Dons are pretty much they're in the bottom. Well, they are in the bottom 4. They're in the bottom 4 of the form table as well. Plymouth are top. So Plymouth have got 16 points from their last 6 games. Absolutely flying. MK Dons have lost 5 of their last 6 games. They're averaging the lowest amount of shots, MK Dons. The ground, we know the ground there is very rarely sort of sold out. It's a lot of gaps there. There are even more gaps than usual at the moment. So there's no real atmosphere to speak of. In midweek, they were beaten 1-0 at home to Bristol Rovers. It could have been worse, but for the goalkeeper, performing miracles. Home form awful. Lost 4 of 6 on their own patch at Stadium MK. So it's bad times for them at the moment. So if you can lose at home to Bristol Rovers, and who aren't great at this level, and maybe get away with it at 1-0, then the visit of the league leaders, I think, would be the last thing that MK Dons manager, players, fans are looking forward to. They're flying away from home, not quite as unbeatable Plymouth, I've got to say, as they are at home, but they're averaging almost 2 goals a game on the road. And if they keep that average up, I think that'll be enough to win this game, because MK Dons lost too many good attacking players last summer, and they haven't replaced them, unfortunately. It's all gone a little bit flat. So yeah, the only thing I can say negative on Plymouth is that defender Dan Scarr, who's played every game, is suspended. I'm not sure that's going to impact them that much, because it's a match I expect them to sort of sweep MK Dons aside in. So yeah, I thought the price was a real standout.
It's always good to kind of know why the price is a bit bigger than it should be, and if it is a case of the suspension, then perhaps it's worth taking that price still at 2.3. Yeah, Mark, a couple of European shouts. We're going to go to League On first, and surprise, goals, and more goals. Tell us a little bit about this game. Strasbourg at home to Lille.
Yeah, it's a Friday night game as well, so you need to sort of bear that in mind. But yeah, we're 10 rounds deep in Ligue 1. Strasbourg got their first win of the season last weekend away at Angers, 3-2. Their manager, Julien Stéphan, was under a lot of pressure going into that game. Last year, they finished 6th, and clearly things weren't working for them so far this season. Defensively, they've been a little bit of a rabble, and going forward, a bit wasteful. But I'm confident that they will start to rise to the league. They're too good not to. Their head coach is clearly quite capable, and their forward line is very strong in terms of Kevin Gamero, Habib Diallo, Ludovic Ajorc, who is actually missing this weekend. But even still, there's enough quality in forward areas to cause problems. They've scored in 8 of 10. They're playing a Lille team who've scored in 10 of 10 under Paulo Fonseca. Strasbourg, just the one clean sheet. Lille, just the one clean sheet. So BTTS has copped in 8 of 10 Strasbourg games, as well as 9 of 10 Lille matches under Paulo Fonseca. Just their derby win last week against Lens, not paying out for both teams to score backers. And anyone who saw the game would have realised that it really should have Lille quite fortunate to take the points in that game. So yeah, basically, together, collectively, these two teams have seen BTTS in 18 of 20 Ligue 1 games already this season, and we're getting 1.83 on a repeat, which is very tasty, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, Strasbourg have scored in 20 of the last 24 home league games. Lille, even before Fonseca arrived, have been very good at scoring. They've scored in 20 of 24 away days since the start of last season as well. Just recorded 3 away clean sheets in that sample. 71% of those games going BTTS. Talk about sort of Strasbourg having firepower. Well, Lille do too as well. Jonathan David, who will see the World Cup with Canada. Jonathan Bamba, Unas, Gomez. Loads of firepower there. Cabela's in the squad. Weah's back at way level now as well. So yeah, I expect both teams to score, and that price will probably crumble by the time Friday night kicks off and people realise the numbers in our favour.
Yeah, not long to get it on, lads. Friday night, if you're listening on the podcast, Union Berlin, plus a quarter of a goal against Dortmund, 1.88. And I suppose that a consequence of Dortmund and Bayern playing that epic draw, it was just meant Union Berlin could just sneak a little bit further ahead. And you like them here, despite maybe they might be in a false position ultimately this season.
Yeah, they probably are in a false position. That's absolutely right. If you look at all the underlying metrics and processes, Union aren't sort of flourishing as the league table suggests they are, but they are a team whose style and characteristics don't lend themselves to be sort of dominant on the XG battles and things like that compared to the likes of Bayern or Man City, at least. They're very tough, they're very gritty, but they've got a pair up front right now who are just taking their opportunities in the form of their lives, and Geraldo Becker and Jordan Pefok as well. And look, Union in Berlin are very, very difficult to beat. They've taken 10 points from 12 this season. That includes holding Bayern already and beating Leipzig at home. And go back to the start of last season, they've lost just 2 of 21 home league fixtures. They've scored 18 of those and conceded multiple goals on only 3 occasions. They are very difficult to beat. They've got a home tie against Malmo on Thursday night in Europe. But I think, playing at home gives them enough opportunity to recover and prepare for this. So far, they've turned around from Europe and performed pretty well anyhow. And I just don't trust Dortmund away from home, even still. 4 clean sheets on their travels in the Bundesliga, going back to the start of last season. If you concede away at Union, you have to dig deep to try and score twice to win this match. And even if this game ends all square, we're taking a half stakes profit. And I think just look at Union. I mentioned they're gritty, they're solid, they're difficult to beat, but they're just very, very good at kind of inviting pressure on, but limiting sort of key, clear chances. Bayern managed just 3 shots on target from inside the penalty area, Leipzig 2. If they're able to limit those kind of attacks to those kind of few chances inside the penalty area, they absolutely can do the same for a Dortmund team who defensively, as we know, are pretty weak. In 3 of their 4 away games already this season, they've conceded 5 shots on target. If you exclude the bottom 6 domestically, they've conceded twice or more in 4 of 6 league games as well. So I expect Union to score, and I don't expect them to concede more than once. So for that reason, I think the league leaders can avoid defeat, and I think the plus quarter goal start is quite nice. Home advantage on side as well.
Yeah, 1.88 currently on matchbook.com. Well, we're checking out. Okay, before we get into best bets, and there's a good mix of the best bets well we're checking out. If you don't have a Matchbook account and you're looking to set one up, we currently have a £30 welcome offer. That's money back as a free bet if your first bet loses. You enter the bonus code INSIGHTS30. That's INSIGHTS30. £30 welcome offer, money back as a free bet. We've touched on best price a lot on this podcast, but if you do follow the @Team Matchbook Twitter account, you'll see invariably, particularly around the hour before games, we do have the best price in Premier League, most Premier League and Champions League games. So well, we're checking out, and perhaps if you want to put on a multiple too, you can maybe chuck the guys' best bets here in a treble. So Miguel, we'll go to you first. You did put up 2 on the best bets. I'd like you not to mention the second because essentially Adrian's gone for that one. So if you wouldn't mind tackling Fulham versus Bournemouth, please, and no spoilers regarding the other one, that'd be great.
Yeah, just I suppose it's. I think that's an absolute banker. We've done okay with some of the both teams to score recently, particularly the bottom half of the table, where it's been a chaotic season, and those 2 teams that have had among the most chaotic games are Fulham and Bournemouth. Lots of goals, lots of swings both ways. I think this will be a similar match, but pure and simple as regard. I mean, I think it's actually a very difficult match to call at the moment. But one thing that isn't difficult to call, I think, is that both teams will score, and may as well keep it simple in terms of a best bet in that regard, because I'm very confident this will come true.
Very good. Miguel's been on fire with the best bets this season in Europe as well as domestically. Adrian, I think you've just put this in to give you an excuse to talk about Arsenal, but prove me wrong here and tell me why it's a good bet.
Well, no, you're right. Yeah, bang to right. You got me. I think it's clear. I'm not a huge Leeds fan under Jesse Marsh. It feels a long time since they beat Chelsea and Wolves at Ellen Road. Since then, they've not been on a good run. I know they started well at Palace, but they faded quite badly. I just feel that Arsenal are playing so well at the moment. They won this fixture 4-1 at a canter last season. And I think they can do something similar this time around. You look at the away performances. Okay, they lost at Manchester United, Arsenal, but the other wins have all been professional, clean sheet victories, scoring multiple goals on the road at places where they have dropped points in the past. They're scoring goals really, really freely. Gabriel Jesus has been rested for the Buda Glimt game. He stayed at home, and I think that will hopefully bode well for him at the weekend. I think it'll come into the game nice and sharp. And just the way Arsenal are playing, I think they're more than capable of scoring 2, 3, 4 goals in this game. It's if you look at the stats, 15 of 17 games between them have had more than 1.5 goals this season, Leeds and Arsenal. So they've not been involved in very many goalless draws or 1-0ers. I see this as being an entertaining match that Arsenal will come out on top in. And you've got to, most Gunners fans will expect a nice, handsome away win here, and I think they'll get it.
Yeah, 1.6 is the match odds. You can boost that up to 1.83 with over 1.5 goals combined with Arsenal's win at around 5 to 6 in all money. So yeah, that looks a decent price there for Arsenal away to Leeds. Mark, we touched on the best bet. I tried my best to not give it away, but I think you did that yourself. But sum up it for those that do skip to the end of the bet to the best bets. Why over 2.5 in Leicester City versus Crystal Palace is a bet for you at 1.91.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's a blind bet for me when the price is 1.91. That price implies there's just a 52% chance that we see 3 goals or more at the King Power on Saturday, and that's just completely underplaying the prospect of goals, in my opinion. But that's also the opinion of the numbers, which go back a long term now. Since the start of last season, Leicester games have seen over 2.5 goals in 68% of matches, with 70% featuring both teams scoring. The average goals per game comes in at 3.41, and this season alone it increases to 4.33. 8 of 9 going overs, 5 of 9 going over 3.5, and 7 of 9 seeing both teams scoring as well. We know all about the disastrous defence that Leicester have right now, but going forward, I think you can't deny that they've got fantastic individual quality, good enough to score against any defence, as they've proven already this season. So I think they can get on the score sheet and cause Crystal Palace problems. But on the flip side, Palace themselves will bring plenty of noise going forward. They've got so many talented, creative players. Fully expect them to get on the score sheet here, and they themselves have seen both teams scoring in 6 of 8 already this season. That's despite playing half of those fixtures against Big Six opposition too. So, expecting a good end-to-end game here. Leicester desperately need the points because of the situation that they're in. So, I fully expect them to take a front-foot approach, and hopefully a bit of a shootout follows on. So, over 2.5 goals would be the best bet.
Beware the early kickoff no more, perhaps. Over 2.5 goals. That's a good one to tune in for 12.
It's one of those myths that I put straight in the bin. But now I say all of that, it's going to be 0-0, isn't it? So
it'll be a long weekend if that's the case. But really like the case there, lads. Brilliant podcast, well done. My thanks to Adrian, my thanks to Mark, my thanks to Miguel. Plenty of Premier League action next week. We'll be back for all that. But until then, enjoy the weekend's action, and we'll chat to you then.